Good evening, everyone. Welcome to On The Couch. Well, it's a final series that just continues to give, and it's produced a grand final. It could be the ultimate contest. Geelong, with 15 wins on the bounce, take on the Swans, who hung on in a one-point thriller against the Pies, the master of close finishes in 2022. We congratulate Paddy Cripps, a worthy Brownlow medalist, and we now count down to Saturday afternoon at the mighty MCG, where the grand final returns to, and we're excited, looking forward to that, as we are about having you back in the chair, big fella. Johnny Brown joins us again. Welcome, Brownie.
Thanks, boys. Thanks, Rooster and Gaz. Thanks to everyone's support. Obviously, Mum passed away a couple of weeks ago, so thanks to everyone. It's a very close-knit community, the football world, that's for sure. And so great to be back here and looking forward to grand final week. I'm not going to be as busy because I had a few little functions booked for the Brisbane Lions when they're going to be in the GF. But
didn't we both, Brownie?
Yeah.
A few openings. So we're going to get stuck into it. We've got a great grand final ahead of us. We had a great Brownlow medal last night, Rooster.
We did.
Sunday night version for reasons that are well known.
Yeah, and, popular winner too, Paddy Cripps. Yeah. I think we all love the way he goes about it. Maybe not so popular in an AFL house, given some of Gill's comments, which we'll get into. But he's a star, and what a turn of events for that man to have actually been able to get himself up for that round 22, round 23 period, given all that was going on, and pull out a three-voter was awesome in retrospect.
Another one of my boys I've had a coffee with, Gaz, too, so I was claiming that.
Right, take that one off.
Hasn't taken him long to find his groove.
2 weeks is fresh in your mama touch. It's nice to see. No, well done. It's great. We'll have a chat about it a little bit later. I quite like the Sunday Brownlow. I don't know whether it's out very much whether I'll do it again, but it's nice to have some clear air to get stuck into the footy, and that's what we'll do now, because, I mean, we don't try not to go overboard on numbers, but sometimes it's too compelling. And we look at this, if you look at it from a statistical point of view, this is a grand final that, on paper anyway, looms as just about perfect. The two teams are in ripping nick. 15 on the bounce, as I said, in a row for Geelong, 9 in a row for the Sydney Swans. And then look at this, boys. This is what gets us excited as footy nerds and nuffies. We just sit at this and we go, how can we not get a contest?
Yeah. So go to the very bottom line there, points differential from turnover. So we bang on all year about the turnover game. The turnover game is where 80% of games of football are won and lost. And this is why, because you get to the end of the season and you've got the two best teams in this category, 1 and 2, going head-to-head. So it shapes as the perfect contest.
It does. It really does. Sydney we thought Sydney made the finals last year, didn't they? But we didn't probably think, certainly not the first half year, they had this in them. But the last 8 weeks, 8 or 9 weeks of the season, it's been as good as Geelong. It's like the two boxers, the frustration in boxing. You don't get the two best fighters fighting each other in their prime. But these two teams are in their prime, and they're clearly the best two teams in the competition. So bring it on Saturday.
Those numbers are defending turnover and scoring from turnover, things that we talked about on Friday night, which we'll get into from the Brisbane Lions that just couldn't handle it. But Sydney look like they are capable of handling what Geelong have been able to serve up.
They almost did it again, though, didn't they? The Pies.
Oh, well.
It was inconceivable with 5 minutes to go, but it was inevitable that they were going to do it at the same time. They almost got there. So they go down to a goal and a point against the eventual.
There is no doubt about it. Now, Sydney's got a great last quarter record, but there is no doubt about that does play into your mind as an opposition player. When you start to lose momentum, there's no doubt that comes into your mind.
Oh,
and you think, geez, the Collingwood record, oh, no, it's happening again. And
it was unbelievable.
It's hard to then try and quicken up the ball again, isn't it, for Sydney Swans players? But fortunately, they just got over the line.
Hold your thoughts on it, because we'll unpack it, but I'll tell you what, it was always going to be a tight one.
This group is probably the best I've ever seen at being able to manage the moments and play the minutes, and that's been a consistent language we've used. Play the minutes. You have to play the minutes to beat us.
The Swans strike first. First 4 to the Swans.
It is game on wheel, 1 quarter away from a grand final.
Got chills. You can feel the tension in the arena at the moment. This gets the hairs on the back of your neck standing up.
There is hope. Twice this year they've come from 23 points or more down at three-quarter time to win Collingwood. So they have done it this year. One season ends, one continues. 12 minutes of desperate acts ahead. Kruger, the sub, onto his left, towards goal. 14 points. Low ball towards Papley, just moves more out of the way, ends up with a ball, but not the mark. Got the free.
2 hands in the back. Umpire had a perfect view of it.
35 minutes since their last goal, and the SCG erupts. Oscar Elliott, they get a launch at it. from the side, Check. He's been paid the mark. For his first goal, the prelim final, they refuse to go away, the Pies. Brilliant looking kick for Hoskin Elliott. Almost should have taken the mark. Picks it up at ground level. Can they get the goal? Hoskin Elliott's got it. You can't believe what you're seeing.
Is there a Collingwood god somewhere? It's the Swans with the numbers. McCartan to Florent, and Florent tries to get rid of it. Side bottom, picks up, clean, goes. They're back to within 3. The Pies are absolutely charging. McInerney needs to get rid of it. Does. It's going to go through for a minor score. And the Swans, the Bloods, will play in the last game of the season.
What a finish. Wow.
Jeez, as a player, I reckon that's up there with one of the greatest prelim finals ever.
We nearly blew, but bring on next week. Can't wait.
Look at the pictures of that. Tells the story. It's why we get so excited about it all. And there was this inevitability that they were going to come, and the irony of them falling short by a point was lost on no one. Lost no supporters at all, Collingwood. They've been enormous. We'll talk about them as we go on. But let's unpack a couple of things. And the first one that just hit you, like, we weren't there. The boys were there, did a fantastic job. And you go and look at match up. And Buddy, straight away, on a scoreless final in the first week against Melbourne, you always go to Buddy because you know what he is. And the matchup's not there. The one that we think, the Darcy Moore matchup's not there.
Well, I was surprised for 2 reasons, Gaz, because the job that Stephen May did on Buddy Franklin was still able to influence the game offensively as well. And, of course, the job that Darcy Moore did on Tom Hawkins was able to shut him down and still have a big impact offensively as well. So you go, well, geez, perfect matchup for Buddy Franklin, and would let him go up the ground as well. Moore would be able to set up. So I think it surprised everyone. And, unfortunately for Collingwood, it didn't work out at all.
But the way he did it, the way Buddy impacted the game wasn't the way you thought. Without the matchup, you thought, oh, maybe he's going to take over, and he did. He had some moments, but this was a different Buddy.
It's never been his go. This
is just like him crashing packs, competing, bringing the ball to ground, creating opportunity. The admiration for him even goes up another notch.
That's right. So he's never been a crash and bash, stand under the high ball key forward. He's played with he's been a graceful forward, which is a compliment.
That there is just on the back of his want to bring the ball to ground and refuse to be outmatched.
Yeah. So the circumstances, the situation dictated he rise to that level. I'm not sure he needed to rise to that level, but that he played that role
and accepted
it. And he embraced it, didn't he?
Accepted the role, because when you don't score in that first final, it's all about Buddy's going to hit the scoreboard next week.
I wonder if that wasn't part of the messaging. Is you just simplify it, because he has been defined by goal kicking. He's 1,000 goals. So just on the matchup too, I wonder, did they outsmart themselves a little bit, Collingwood? So do they look at the Moore matchup, and if Moore goes to Franklin, because Darcy Moore, on this type of player, has been exposed at times this year. Like we did the Tom Lynch game where. So do you think he's better suited as that roll off?
Absolutely. And there's for 2 reasons too. So you look at it, and we can go back to our days playing as a key forward. If Braden Maynard come to me as a smaller defender, I would be insulted. Plus, I'm coming off a bad game in the first final. As we know, Buddy Franklin has been underrated in terms of his competitiveness. He's a great competitor, so he would have been hurting from last week, his performance. So when Maynard comes, I reckon he just would have stuck the chest out and thought, hang on a minute, are you guys disrespecting me here? Now, we know Collingwood's matchups have been fantastic all year, so we can't knock them about that. But I think this one they got wrong.
So they did. Yeah. That's the Buddy factor. But then there's this factor. Yeah. This is the other part of it. So you had no intercept marks in the first half, Darcy Moore. He didn't get involved. So what we've seen from Collingwood is this helter-skelter, get it from the back half and go. There was none of that. Yeah. He wasn't even in the contest. He goes on to Buddy in the second half, and all of a sudden his intercept possessions go up. He gets involved. They score from the back half, and it's a Collingwood game again.
Yeah. Why? Because Buddy takes you to the ball.
Well,
you're taking you to the situation where he's in contest time and time again, similar to what we saw with Stephen May a couple of weeks ago. So it was a little bit of a head scratcher, that one.
Yeah, so there was a couple of things that changed in the second half. So the matchup gets lined up. I thought the really significant thing was Sam Reid gets hurt. So we know Buddy's not a big contested mark. They need a contested mark presence forward of the ball. This bloke has been enormous in the back half. I mean, this here sets up a goal, gets it on quickly, bang, goes in for a goal. Another contested mark. All of a sudden, he's causing them all. Buddy's doing the grunt work, and Sam Reid's put it on the 23 and the cap and saying, well, leave it to me.
Well, so what does it mean for them if he can't go?
I think if he can't go, then it's going to be... It makes their job enormously difficult, given... It's Tom Stewart, and we'll talk about Collar Jasny, it's Henry, their intercepts. So Buddy will do what Buddy did, but you saw how hard it got when Reid went off. He hardly marked the footy after half-time. Yeah,
so Collingwood got going in the second half, though. The ball movement early, it didn't look like a Collingwood game, did it?
No, and this sums it up. So I mean, we can talk about it all day, but Josh Dacos to Nick Dacos has been the greatest 1-2 of all time. When Josh Dacos is dump kicking the ball and Nick Dacos is on his own inside the corridor, you know that they're going. And that's Sydney pressure, by the way. Sydney pressure forces you to do that. Over 200 first quarter dump kick. So the adjustment's got to be made. Come in at half time. Boys, we don't dump kick. We run and gun from the back half. So then you're looking for a sign. You go, OK, have they made the adjustment? And we saw it. And we saw it here. So this is into the third quarter. De Goey picks a footy up, does what Collingwood, or goes to do what Collingwood have been doing the whole first half and says, no, we're not a dump kick team. Let's hand out. And then and this is what got there, and then Collingwood.
Now it looks like a Collingwood game again.
It's really good, It just took too long, guys. We go back to the first final. Geelong were jumped at the start, weren't they, by Collingwood? Obviously, the pressure was outstanding, but they were able to make the adjustment at quarter time, not at half time. So they've still got 3 quarters up their sleeve, Geelong, and they were to work their way back into the football. So you just feel as if that composure from Collingwood just came too late in combination with a couple of matchups and all those sorts of things, and a difference in the way they moved the ball.
They were a little bit fumbly early. Some broken tackles. So I think you're right, Brownie. They did take a little bit more time than Sydney to settle, and in the end, it was proved insurmountable, the gap, because that's where all the damage was done.
But they had a crack, and we'll show you in a minute. We'll show you what, right to the last play.
Love the way they've gone.
So now it's interesting. So Sam Reid is the swinger. It's a bit like Holmes. It'll be debated all week. We don't know what's going on. I hope both play, obviously. If they don't, Logan McDonald doesn't mark a footy, doesn't touch the ball in the first half of the game when Reid and Franklin are playing. This is early in the third quarter. We've seen him play great games when Buddy Franklin hasn't been there. So there's a job to be done on the mind of Logan McDonald if Sam Reid doesn't play, because he's capable, he can do it. You've got to get him involved early. And the other kicker in all this is Peter Adams is sitting home going, well, what was he thinking?
What was he thinking? Yeah, he got suspended for hitting young Taj Wai, and here's this incident here in that VFL game. But just a brain snap. He's had a couple of brain snaps this year, so unfortunate for Peter Adams and the Sydney Swans, because he was an important player early in the year, guys. So he would have absolutely been playing in the grand final on Saturday, but he's obviously got to pay the price and live with that. Who comes in now? They've got McLean, they've got Amity as the taller players, or do you just roll with the smaller forward line? You just try and challenge the Geelong key defenders. Knowing Logan McDonald's more of a hit-up player at this stage of his career, and Buddy, as we've said, that's not his greatest strength, being that big physical beast and competing and bringing the ball to the ground, but it's going to be critical because those intercepting defenders is a real concern.
Thankfully, they got a journeyman who's in career best nick playing in the ruck.
Yeah.
I mean, of all the great stories going around, throw Tom Hickey into the mix.
He's been unbelievable at his fourth football club, and what a final series he's had, really. So he goes head-to-head with Max Gawn and Luke Jackson in the first final, and does more than hold his own in what is probably the most daunting assignment for an individual player in the game. And then again, on the weekend, he was absolutely huge, and just important moments as well. So he takes that big mark late when you need a presence down the line just to be able to reset field position. He was huge.
You could argue he's been the best pickup in the last 5 years of any club. If you go pound for pound, what you've had to give up to get a player, his influence on that football club has been unbelievable, really. And obviously in big games, he stepped up. Remember, that's against Gawn and Jackson in the first final as well.
We talk about players who make their career or make their reputations in finals. They are unbelievable numbers. So let's roll through a few. Callum Mills, he's already made his reputation.
What a leader.
What a player. And you talk about flexibility and role playing. And
glue man. So, stick him anywhere.
Yeah. Pendlebury gets off the chain.
He was huge in the first quarter, Pendlebury.
Thankfully, a coach has woken up that Nick Dacos just can't run around and do what he's... So Ryan Clark goes to Nick Dacos and has an impact. He's off the chain, Pendlebury. Mills goes to him in the second quarter and just puts the clamp after he spent, Dom and Jack Crisp, and then his willingness and preparedness to go back and do the game-saving, stay in the back up.
He's symbolic of that Bloods culture that we've seen for 20 years in Sydney. And how the leaders just, I'm not going to say sacrifice themselves, and it's investment in the team, Gaz. And obviously he's able to go in a number of different roles across the ground. At midfield, it's been the majority this year. And the great strength for him is he still contributes offensively, doesn't he?
Yeah,
so he can put time into a player, can shut his influence down, but still find the footy himself and have a big influence. But he's a Bloods man. He's a Bloods man, and that's why he's a young captain. He's been fantastic.
Yeah, the other one's Luke Parker, who's cut from the same cloth, and his preparedness to play a role. So he went head-to-head with De Goey early, and you could see... After this moment here, he's straight into him. He's straight into the guy that's been the tone setter for Collingwood over the first two finals, and he's given it to him. So straight away it sends a message to your younger teammates who haven't been a part of this environment before, but you have. Hey, come with me, boys. I'm going to set the standard and lead the way, and they all jumped on.
So you go back even to round 2. I know it's a long way and a lot of water under the bridge, but Mills went to Dangerfield for, I think, almost 60 minutes of that. And Danger had his second worst game of the year. So
he had 13 touches that day, I guess. Yeah,
so
it's quite nice, isn't it?
Nice to have up your sleeve, isn't it? So we talked about...
Do you go again with that? Do you go with that matchup? Well, he's very influential on the weekend. Dangerfield was outstanding. Yeah. Do you go straight at that, or do you keep that up your sleeve?
I think because it's not an absolute lockdown initially. They play and he plays with an opponent. I think you can. I think you can say to him, well, nominally there's your opponent, and back him if he starts to get hot to go, OK, let me close down a bit.
Yeah.
Pressure we spoke about from a Sydney point of view, it's pretty simple, But if there's, we looked hard for a chink for Geelong, and it's almost impossible to find one. But they've got to bring this. I mean, that's crazy pressure that they've had, and they've been doing it for a long time, 9 or 10 weeks now. Have to bring it again.
Yeah, well, it's not so much a chink in Geelong's armoury, but it's the time that we've seen them most vulnerable over the hot streak that they've been on. Was the first quarter against Collingwood in the first week of the finals, when Collingwood brought outrageous pressure, and Geelong. It wasn't that they didn't handle it, but they just couldn't find any time and space.
And that's exactly right. It's not a chink, absolute wrong word, but you got to bring that to make sure that you're competitive.
Absolutely, because otherwise, when you don't bring it, they slice you because they're so skillful.
That's their one wood. Yep. If you don't bring your one wood grand final day, absolutely. So they do run well. They're pretty athletic, aren't they? So they're able to get across contest to contest and put maximum amount of pressure on the opposition, Gaz.
So David King stopped me this morning at radio, said, you got to show this passage of play, the dying moments. And this sums up Collingwood. So watch Darcy Moore here. This is the last boundary throw in. He just goes. He's on Buddy Franklin here, if you don't mind. He says, well, I'm leaving Buddy. The ball hasn't been thrown in, but I'm going. Hayward, I think it is, who says, I'll pick you. Buddy, he goes, I'll half go with you, but then you can go. So it's a roll of the dice, OK? So Darcy Moore's going, there's one chance left. Right now, he's made the right call. Hayward's half with him and half not. And this is why the Mills smother becomes so important. So look where Moore, if this gets over the back, Moore's running into an open goal. So, and then here... knock this on from De Goey and they're still in the game.
It was so against, Gaz, what Collingwood had done in that last 30 minutes where they just knocked the ball on at all costs, didn't they? They kept it alive. You can imagine the message from Craig McCraig at three-quarter time was, hey, boys, hot potato. The ball's got to be alive the whole time. We can't have stoppage scenarios, but he stopped that. But it just shows more. It would have been an interesting decision for Franklin because normally you wouldn't follow him. But you're thinking, geez, I don't mind man to kick a goal and cost us a prelim.
But he's sitting there going... Cal Mills, for God's sake, man. Don't let this get over the back because I'm going to be on every single show.
Would have been a different story.
For the rest of the night. But that summed up Collingwood. They weren't going to die wondering. And they were absolutely superb.
And I know the biggest tale of the year is going to be written this weekend, but we're going to walk away remembering Collingwood and everything that they've been able to achieve this year, which is pretty rare for a team that isn't going to play in the big dance.
You
remember the exploits of a team that didn't make it.
It's funny how the year's been defined by all those close wins, and yet in the two finals they lose the close games.
Exactly right.
So there's a little bit of luck involved, but geez, they've come a long way, haven't they? And how good's... I know I'm a bit biased, but Craig McRae's messaging, obviously not only internally to his playing group, they've responded, but just in the public, the press conferences, geez, had some great messages. Very simplistic, get on with the job, and I think that Collingwood be very happy with the direction of their footy club.
I said about 8 weeks ago, the players buy what he sells. he sold them the message about going to the, slumping to the ground.
Yeah.
Not one of them slumped.
Nah.
If you ever had the right to slump, it's a one-pointer and a prelim. Not one of them slumped.
Yeah.
So they're buying what he's selling. Let's talk the Cats up after the break. As we go to the break.
A lot of noise about Geelong, about the adjustments that they'd made, the risk that they took to blow everything up, to blow the program up, to change the game plan. I think it's important to reflect on that.
We consciously tried to not think about the past at the start of this pre-season.
We just went through a process of saying, hey, what are we good at? Let's try to maximise that stuff as much as possible. And if some of our weaknesses shine through a bit early in the year, we're not going to run away from it. We're going to double down on what we're good at.
It's hard in a handicap competition, so we acknowledge those, but we're just not prepared to give into it. We say to our players, we're going to give you a chance to win it. And so the choice is we can go into our shell or we can be aggressive and go after it.
What a start for the Cats. The moves they've made have turned to instant gold. Launches onto it. Jeremy Cameron, new star. Barrels it home. Here's Rowan. Out. Players out everywhere. Rowan. Holmes. Goal.
We're doubling down even more than we have previous years, that we might cost ourselves a little bit short term, but we're going to try to set up our program to be at our best when it counts. If we finish 9th because we try to prime ourselves to be at our best later in the year, we'll live with that.
Jeremy Cameron for goal number 6. He's got 6. Bangs it long. Henry's forward. Flies. Oh! Wow. He'll send it back. Long and deep, you sense. He's always been a powerful kick, big pack forms. Oh, Rowan!
The overwhelming sense that I have, and that I'm proud of our players for, is that they believe.
They're going to find a way, and there's a bit of icing on the cake from Hawkins.
We're going to have a crack. We're not going to roll over, and it might not work, and you might be disappointed. You've got to take that emotional risk, but we're going to have a go.
Geelong celebrate. They are through to their 19th grand final.
It's so hard to get to this situation, so embrace the moment.
Embrace it they will. This great football club are back contending again, and when you listen to that, you would suggest, boys, that everything has almost gone to plan. It is just, if you map the season out, if we had Chris Scott's and his coaching staff who had access to everything that they planned, I reckon, from such a variable game, they would be sitting here going, geez, we've got a lot right so far. It counts for nothing right now, but in terms of preparing his group for what comes on Saturday, geez, I don't think they could have done much better.
Regardless of the result, it has gone to plan in the sense that they have given this group the best opportunity because they have timed it to absolute perfection, and so that was the point that Chris Scott was making, is we'll take the hits early, we'll put ourselves out there, and if we fall short, then fine, because we've given ourselves every opportunity to win, and so you got to credit them for that.
I love that too. You got to be able to sell a message to a group when you have a changing game style. I think Collingwood did the same as well. So we're going to live with some vulnerabilities. If we turn the ball over, we may get scored against. Our defenders will be exposed a bit more one-on-one, which we don't see as often in this day and age. But the coach would have sold that to the players. Say, boys, we'll live with that. That's okay. We know there's going to be some teething problems to get our game going throughout the season and set us up to win a flag.
The irony of all that is that they have taken it on, they have been bolder and have been more vulnerable behind the footy, but they've been better. Their turnover game. And so I want you to talk about this, both you guys here. So people sitting at home are going, why are you banging on about turnover so much? We can give you all the numbers, and the numbers tell a great story, because this just doesn't happen. That's through the season. It gets even better in the last 6 or 8 weeks. It's up around 30.
Well, just quickly too, there's twice as many turnovers than there are stoppages in a game.
Yep.
So that's why we bang on about it, Gas.
Yep. And this is a club that's doing it number one on both sides of the footy. So number one for defending and number one for attacking.
They've always been great at defending it. And let's have a look at what it looks like. So keep De Koning in mind there. So he's on the far wing. So Geelong right now, they're in control of the ball. This is where they're a little bit different. They try to take the game on more through this part of the ground, but at times can make them vulnerable. So you turn it over. Little bit of pressure to sort of tidy it up. All the while, what you're doing right now is you're buying time. Yep. So Brisbane get it. Most teams score from this situation, but who was that man on the far side of the wing? It was De Koning. So their ability to get numbers quickly back in line with the ball is the reason that they're the best team in the competition at defending turnovers, because they always start from that position of having that extra number, and having that +1.
It's not just one group who, their backline's responsible for defending turnover. No, it's a whole of club.
You can see the work of the half-forwards and the mids there. They're the ones that bought the time for De Koning.
They stay connected well. The benefit of being at the ground the last few weeks is we see how connected the half-forwards are to the wingers, to the half-backs. So they all work in unison together. And that helps with experience. They've been around and been together for a long time, so no doubt the chemistry is there. But you've got to behold together and have the symmetry for finals that stands up under pressure.
When you've had Tom Hawkins as your figurehead, who's won the goal kicking, I think, 10 years in a row down there, whatever it is, you can be forgiven for going, OK, he's the man. Peripheral players then become just that, a little bit peripheral. But you spoke to Joel Selwood over the weekend?
Yeah, we did. We spoke to Joel on radio, and he basically said that if you've been playing half forward for Geelong, well, then you would just stand and wait for the ball to get kicked into Tom Hawkins, and you didn't really have a role to play on offence. So let's hear from Joel.
To be honest, if you're playing high half forward for us the last couple of years, it's a really tough position when we move the ball extremely slowly and then go in and kick it to the tools.
So from everything that happened on the other Friday night, the small forwards is what I was taken with, is that the Myers and Close and Stengel, just watching them in action.
So the reason that the half-forwards couldn't get involved is because Geelong were a control team. So they were still really good defending turnover, but when they won the ball back from turnover, they would go into a kick-mark style. So there's a half-forward, there's Close. He's got up the ground, and now they're slingshotting out. When they used to look for a mark, take time, take control, now it's the half-forwards, it's the wingers, it's Isaac Smith on a wing, it's Holmes on a wing, and all of a sudden, the strengths that you've got, because Chris Scott said, we're going to double down, we're going to take the risk, we're going to be aggressive and go after it. Well, you play to your strengths because you've got Dangerfield in front of the ball. You got Rowan, you got Hawkins, you got Cameron, you got Stengel. You got all these dangerous players that you're giving the best chance to score in one-on-one situations.
So, and then all of a sudden, you talked about Hawkins and we've talked about Cameron, and Rowan's had his moments and Danger can go forward. Look at these ratings from the weekend.
Yeah,
small forwards.
That's gone to plan. You know, you want to bring the half-forwards into it. Have a look at that.
Well, what it does too, it encourages the forwards to run, the half-forwards to run and get involved and
that's
get creative.
That's a game rating for everyone, by the way, not just small forwards. That's for the whole game.
And that'll challenge Sydney. Because, Sydney's got some really good running defenders, but that'll challenge them as to whether they can... they might be able to run with them, but can they defend them? Say, Florent, Lloyd, Blakey, those types. Yeah. Can they contain these types of guys? So that'll be a really interesting one. Brian Myers is fantastic. 14 disposals at half-time. So he was able to get involved. And I think there may have been a message pre-game that, hey, let's just use up Brian Myers because he's playing on Daniel Rich.
Yeah. So that's the match-up challenge for Sydney. So the obvious match-ups we can talk to now, the Tom McCartan and Tom Hawkins match-up, which is going to be enormous and have a big bearing on it. So that's a record where you go, oh, geez, we hadn't got a handle on Tom Hawkins, but that's as good a record as you can hope for.
He'd be smarting at that. If Tommy's seeing that record, he'll be sitting out the farm at the moment, just sharpening the iron.
What he would be saying, though, is, hey, if you want to go and strip it back even further, my one-on-one record against Tommy McCartan's really good. Yeah. It's almost a 50% win rate, except the round 2 game, it was the McCartan brothers. So he got one-on-one contest with Tom McCartan for the game. Paddy took 7 intercept marks. So the Paddy McCartan matchup on the weekend is going to be enormous. Now, he had Close in that game. Close kicks 4 goals. Yeah. But he impacts on the Tom McCartan situation.
But the rider on that is that was in its infancy, the new game style.
It was,
and the other games were under the old Geelong model of ball movement. This is a different proposition that they're coming up against.
Yeah, and Rampy's record on Jeremy Cameron's been okay, and Jeremy Cameron was a bit banged up back here. But
better than okay.
That really
does give you confidence, though, guys, because this is one of the few defences that have got the capability to go with arguably the best key forward combination in the league.
Well, you got 2 that you don't have to think about straight away.
Absolutely, and 2 genuine match winners. Yeah. So we saw the last time Hawkins in a grand final, he tore Collingwood's heart out in that second half when he got a hold of Ben Reid and arguably should have won the Norm Smith medal. So he's done it on the big dance. We've seen Cameron a couple of weeks ago in that first final against Collingwood. He can rip them apart. So it's a great challenge, but that gives you some level of comfort if you're a Sydney Swans supporter that they can go with those big boys.
Ruck is the situation we always talk about. We've already lauded Tom Hickey, so he's in career best form and goes in with great confidence. it's hard to... It's Reece Stanley is the nominal ruckman, but there's also so many aspects and parts to this. Yeah, so we sat up high, level 4 at the MCG on Friday night, and we thought, how does Tom Stewart and De Koning, how do they keep becoming so free? Well, go to the centre bounce. So Stanley is the ruckman. Blitzarves, for all intents and purposes, is the ruck rover. You go to the next stoppage, Blitzarves is taking the ruck. Stanley has gone and played almost as a genuine key defender. The shuffle back occurs, and then it's De Koning there at the bottom of the picture, or it's Tom Stewart playing as the extra. So it took a little bit of time for us to figure out what was going on and how, time and time again, the Geelong could have a key defender like Stewart and De Koning, two of the best interceptors in the game. So it's the mechanism for Geelong. So this week, the Swans know that's coming. Yeah. And the thing about that was that Stewart wasn't the intercept marker, it was Colajazzi and Henry, because in the end they're looking up at Stewart. Yep. They're going, I want to kick there. But they're kicking it at all the wrong places and they're just getting picked off. So it was stunning to sit there and watch it. Were you surprised that Brisbane allowed that to happen?
Well, going into the game, the planning from the two coaching staff, it's disappointing because what's Chris Scott and the Geelong staff thinking? OK, who's going to take this game away from us? Lachie Neale. So they put work in. Atkins onto him, Atkins gets injured, Guthrie, Selwood. So they've got a plan A, got a plan B, got a plan C. For Brisbane's going to the opposition meeting during the week when you present to the players, Tom Stewart had to be item number one. So Tom Stewart, arguably one of the best defenders of our generation, cannot be allowed to sit behind the ball on his own and set up. And obviously get their defensive flow going, if you want to call it that. So, and that just didn't happen. So
within 40 seconds, he was on his own.
Absolutely, within 40 seconds. So that's got to be a planning thing, and then obviously an execution thing with some of the craft, like Riewoldt leads there when he shouldn't have led, just to open up. But they needed to do a far better job at addressing a great strength for the Geelong Football Club, and that was really disappointing. And not to mention, obviously, disappointment in the key forwards for Brisbane. If you're going to go with 3 key forwards, they've got to stand up. Well,
this is the thing, isn't it? So you go then to the Simon Goodwin comment when Melbourne get bundled out, and he mentioned it. Let's have a listen.
Clubs are no different to what we do. You know, we attack teams' vulnerabilities. And clearly there was a pattern throughout the year of what we struggled with. So as I said, we'll unpack all that as a club. You know, we tried to address it on the run throughout the season. We weren't able to do that to a level where we could get results. You know, we did it to a level to finish second on the ladder, which I'm incredibly proud of, to put yourself in that position. But once again, in finals, it's funny, your vulnerabilities find you. And I heard Dimmer Hardwick talk about it last week with Richmond. They find you in big games when it matters. And if they're not corrected, they'll keep finding you. So we've got to go away and fix it.
And every coach is living that. Your vulnerabilities find you in big finals. So your forwards, your big forwards, you know, you go in and they have a moment against Melbourne where they got hot for a half, but in the end they couldn't mark it. So we'll go through them line by line. So from a Collingwood point of view?
Contest, yeah. So that was an issue for them that Craig McRae said it was unsustainable to be losing contests the way they were week after week after week, but still finding a way. So first half they get smacked and they get smacked on the scoreboard. For Brisbane, their ability to defend was an issue for them all year, and they concede 120 points in the final against Geelong. Yeah,
I think you go through the other teams there. Melbourne, we know clearly their front half's a big concern, and then Fremantle offensively they just really struggle to move the football, don't they? But you know, back onto Brisbane, you know, there's
couple more, I think. We've got Richmond. Again, the defence was their problem, and they got scored heavily against the Lions and the Dogs. The old Bevo, the one that Bevo doesn't like too much, is one-on-one contest.
That's 41% in finals. I think it's sat around 30-odd during home and away as well.
That's why I wanted to move us on and not go to the Bulldogs, because Bevo gets he arcs up every time we bring that up. But we go back to Brisbane, and to me, Brisbane weren't a preliminary final team, you know, so they're lucky to beat Richmond, and Melbourne were clear.
They won't like that. You talk about people that won't like that. They won't like you saying that they weren't a preliminary.
No, they weren't. And my major concern, and there's going to need some big tinkering over the off-season when it comes to their list, because I'm concerned about their run. Now, it's no secret that clubs can get access to GPS data on clubs, and there is coaches in the competition that have used that data and shown their playing group when they come up against Brisbane. Hey, look at the difference. Brisbane are down the bottom when it comes to general running in the competition, and that is a concern they need to address. All over the ground. They've got issues there with the forwards. Obviously, you're playing three big forwards. In the midfield,
just on the forwards, so just do it line by line. So you talked about Geelong, your running capacity of Myers and Close getting up the ground. The year before, it was Neil Bullen and Spargo, those types. So goal-kicking threats, yes. Brisbane Lions, ability to cover ground.
Yeah, different make-up forward line, aren't they? They've got a forward line that they're all goal kickers, guys. Whereas you look at the other top teams, you've got those 3 or 4 half forwards can get up and down and help overwhelm the contest, help your turnover game. Midfield, Neil spreads pretty well, but I'm not sure about the other guys and their ability to spread and their run and create there. And then half-back beyond the football. Daniel Rich is obviously challenged in that area. Kadeem Coleman has been good there. When Zorko goes back there, he's been challenged. Archie is challenged in that area. So there is running concerns. And we know if you're in the bottom, 3 or 4 teams in the competition at running ability, that ain't going to get it done in the last fortnight of a season, Gaz. Now, they might not like hearing that, but that's just the reality of it. The modern game, the top teams, they've all got really good runners across the board, especially from their half forwards.
So is that personnel? But so they're going to add Dunkley probably, or Ralphie's going to come and tell us. So you look at it and do you either go to and throw the gauntlet at the feet of those players and say you've got to get better, because that can happen if you do.
You can become a better runner. You can become a better runner, but it's more than just putting you on the stopwatch and saying you've got to run a 10-minute 3K. The other part of it is actually being selfless and wanting to defend, which I've got big queries on. So have a look at Daniel Rich here. So that's his man that's run over now towards the boundary line. So pause it right there. That's Gary Rowan. Have a look at Daniel Rich here. Do you think he wants to join in on team defence? So he's still looking over. I've got my man covered. Gary Rowan's put 30 metres on him. They could have held hands when they crossed each other, but he had no desire to join in on team defence whatsoever. So it's all right when he's got the footy and he looks beautiful, with the footy because he's a great kick. But time and time and time again, you will see that from Daniel Rich having no interest in joining in on team defence.
It's an interesting decision. You look at Daniel Rich there, and I think they were smart by Geelong. They put Myers on him, and they would have been told, "Hey boys, get it to Myers in the first half."
Neil Bullen the week before. 2
years ago in the prelim final, Gary Ablett Jr. plays in Daniel Rich, and they just kept looking for Gary Ablett Jr. Had a big impact on that prelim final. So you've got out that aspect. Dane Zorko, at this stage of his career now, probably needs to go to half back. But then can you have Zorko and Rich both as half-back flankers? So, because clearly Coleman's going to be there.
Do you think changes in terms of the profile and their ability, their athletic profile needs to be looked at?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's a serious question mark for Lions, and it's an area they need to address.
How brave do you get? There have been teams that have gone to preliminary finals and been seduced by the fact they're into the last 4 in the competition and misread where they're at. Is this the situation where maybe it's about going back a step or two and trying to get that mix right? Am I putting words in?
Absolutely. No doubt about it. Because I don't think they were in the top 4 teams in the competition at the end of the year. So they've got a couple of wins.
But the bones are there.
the bones are there. Now, we're not throwing the baby out with the bathwater here. But you'd hope they don't get seduced by that finish. Like, as you said, Gaz, they need to really look at that list closely and look at the athletic profile, because we all know in the modern game you need to be able to run. We've just spoken about those Geelong forwards.
They are a kicking team.
They are a kicking team. And you can be a kicking team. Sydney are a kicking team, but they can really run on all parts of the ground.
Strong stuff. Very, very interesting. Well, you're talking about player movement and trade movement, trading. It's on, and it's on in earnest. Josh Dunkley's already declared he'd like to get to Brisbane, saying it's one thing, getting it done is another. Johnny Ralph plays in this space better than anyone, and he's going to join us on the other side of the break to update us on Dunkley and Grundy and a whole host of others.
P. Cripps, 3 votes, and I declare the winner of the 2022 Brownlow Medal is Patrick Cripps of the Carlton Football Club.
Patrick Cripps
Brownlow medalist, how does that sound to you?
Mate, I actually don't know whether to laugh or cry. I still remember being at boarding school back in WA, and I used to always ask my mum, make sure you sign me out, give me leave on Brownlow night, because I used to love watching it. It's unbelievable. Yeah, I can't put it into words at the moment, but it's a massive honour, and I'm absolutely pumped. It's pretty weird, like when you get to AFL level, you still feel like you're a young kid. I still feel like I'm a young kid on the farm, and you know, when you go to a Carlton training session, there's an open training session, and kids have your number on your back, you still feel like you're their age, and you realise, you know, how much influence you have on young people.
Got most things covered on this On The Couch special. We can talk to premierships and All Australians and everything else, but no, not a Brownlow medal. We can't help you there, but it was a great result. Well done, and it does bring up the debate. Would he be rather be playing on Saturday with his Carlton team than the Brownlow medal? Of course he would. But well done to Paddy, fantastic. We're absolutely wrapped for him. Johnny Ralph joins us in the chair. I know these two teams have got all before them, but there's 16 other teams who are getting pretty busy in the quest to join them next year. Yeah, that's right. We'll start with Gil McLachlan first, and that spot fire, of course, where he called the appeals process with Patrick Cripps complete nonsense. So he tried to put it into context today. He was a little bit of backtracking there. He said he couldn't remember a more worthy and popular winner as Cripps. You know what I thought of that decision. I thought it was confusing at best. There will be no change to the Brownlow eligibility. Thing with him, of course, though, is that this is an interview conducted with Ash Brown 2 weeks ago for the AFL record. It was always dropping today. Just an own goal from Gil. Yeah, he'd be disappointed with the timing, no doubt, because you want to celebrate. And a great winner. Like, yeah, he's much loved in the football community, Patrick Cripps, no doubt. So Gil he'd be dirty on that quote. I think maybe the only change I would make from and I was happy with Patrick Cripps getting off, so I'm glad that he didn't get suspended and obviously wins a Brownlow. Maybe after a player gets, if a player did get suspended, they're ineligible to receive votes for the rest of the season. You know, if that happened, just to avoid a nasty situation where potentially, if Cripps had been suspended for a week and then got 3 votes in the last game and still won, you just avoid that uncomfortable situation. Don't like it, Brownie. What if there's 10 blokes that are all in the same boat? All of a sudden, some little nipsy's had 6 touches, going to get 3 votes. Yeah, that's a good point. Bring a few. Bring a few. You found a hole in that pretty quick. That's been thrown up before. Yeah. Paddy Cripps had the best answer to it when he was asked about it today. He said, well, he read my name out, gave me the 3 votes at the end. I think that's the final line. We need to talk about that, and away we go. No doubt. So the news keeps getting better for Max Holmes, guys. Now, I was down at Geelong today, and I tell you what, the fans are up and about. A few run-throughs, a few laps. Now, this is not overwhelmingly positive. But the good news is that the conditioning boss in Harry Taylor says tonight his clinical signs on assessment are encouraging. Now, to me, that means that the scans didn't show a hamstring tear, just those neural issues that were revealed on Friday night on the telecast. So if he gets through Wednesday, and they will absolutely test him to the limit there, well, the Cats will name him. It's a game-time decision. It's not great for our nerves, but it's great for the drama of grand final day. The news is just into on Sam Reid, a minor groin strain, so he'll try to train tomorrow. If you're Buddy Franklin, you take that in. I don't think Sam Reid plays. Gee, that's going to be great drama. We'll let that play out too, because we're going to be second-guessing ourselves, but he's never been more cheered in his life.
That's dangerous, because you'd feel like you're running a 400 at the Olympics. Absolutely.
The only thing I would say now with the sub-rule, you have got the benefit of roll the dice for Sam Reid. If he gets injured, just make sure the guy that's coming in has a potential play at same spot. Josh Dunkley, so he's off to the Lions, or he's hoping to be off to the Lions, so he officially asked for a trade today. My understanding is it's a 6-year deal between $700,000 and $750,000 a year. The Dogs will ask for 2 first-rounders because they think he's actually improved as a player recently. Now, I can tell you tonight that Jack Gunston is still a chance to get to the Lions. Now, he's an unrestricted free agent. They have cap space for him. So imagine bringing in Gunston, Dunkley, the Nick Dacos equivalent in Will Ashcroft. So they'll use up all their picks on their 2 father sons. They'll have to get inventive then. So I think they're going to have to consider the likes of Devon Robinson. West Coast very keen. They'll get this deal done, but it's going to take every pick they have this year and next. That might be okay. I think it's worth it, because while the window's open there, I think it's right. They need that upgrade. The great Brodie Grundy conundrum remains. Let me tell you what's happening. I can't explain why it's happening. So at Collingwood, Brodie Grundy has played his last game at the club, bar an extraordinary backflip. This has all been driven by Collingwood, not Grundy. My understanding is that the football boss in Graham Wright met with Grundy's management and he said, we need his cap space off the books. So it allowed him to look around. He chose Melbourne over Port Adelaide and Geelong. He only wants to go to Melbourne. He will go to Melbourne. The Pies have got a little bit of interest in Sam Hayes, who's the Port Adelaide tap ruckman. But you look at last week, Sean Darcy, 19 hit outs to advantage. Of course, you know, they were dominated in the ruck again. I can't explain it,
but it's going to happen.
So the money, it's clearly the financial. I mean, if he was on 600 or 500, then clearly he stays at Collingwood.
But they're bringing in McStay on 600 to the number. So Grundy goes out on 900. Even if they pay 300 of it, they're only saving 300 in the cap.
Yeah,
and then you get McStay instead of Grundy.
Yeah, and they bring in Frampton, they bring in potentially Fiorini for very little. They bring in Bobby Hill. I don't think any of those guys are real game changers.
Is it the De Goey situation and having to re-sign him?
He's on 750, he'll get 800. So it's not about De Goey.
So there's no... Well, is there a chance who Brodie... I'm not saying he's going to do this, but he says, I'll take less to stay. Is that a possibility?
I think he's really enlivened and excited by the prospect of Melbourne now. So it's all about what happens with the trade, but I think he's made up his mind.
AFL met today with the Commission?
Yes, that's correct. So you're going to be patient, Nick, because the AFL said everything is in place apart from the stadium deal. I know you've heard that before, but they basically have ticked off every one of the work streams apart from the stadium. Gil McLachlan has committed to staying in the job until he delivers it. They'll go to the federal government for funding once they've ticked off the business case. Tassie has lifted their deal. Was 10 million over 100 million over 10 years. It's now 12 million a year over 12 years. And so look, it'll get done, but again, you've got to be patient.
So is there a situation where it is a 19th licence contingent on the stadium?
No.
So you grant the licence so that the stadium has to be...
Yep.
There won't be any contingencies?
I specifically asked that question of Gil and he said, it's all about the stadium. Now, he says, we will get it done.
That's right.
Yeah.
The AFL are the world champions at bringing in, partners and private money.
Well, you do something and get it fixed and sort it out. Yeah?
Right,
Sitting there doing nothing.
You were born down there.
Well, that's true too. Very quickly, North Melbourne got some concessions.
That's right. So a future second rounder, a future third rounder. They have to trade them, though, otherwise they will lose them. So at Gold Coast, they got pick 1, 11, 19, 20. I asked Gil McLachlan, why did they get so much? He said in their first year, they got 3 state league players, the likes of Collins and Corbett, and in their second year, they got more. But if you're Freo, you're saying, Darcy Tucker, Griffin Logue, we want those second and third rounders, and the rich get richer with Hopper and Grundy and all those types.
Ralphie, very nice work, very busy week for you. Thanks for jumping in.